Every single day, people leave their homes expecting to come back. They lock the door, or they don't. They text someone they love, they make plans for the weekend, and then nothing. No call, no message, no trace. It's as if the ground simply opened up and swallowed them whole. But here's the strange part. In the vast majority of missing person cases, there's eventually an answer, a body, a witness, a confession, something that closes the file, even if it doesn't heal the family. Most mysteries in the end are solved. This video isn't about those. This is about the cases where the trail didn't just go cold, it vanished. Where trained investigators, search dogs, sonar, satellites, and decades of hindsight still couldn't produce a single satisfying answer. 3 people who entered the world's view one moment and then weren't there the next. One of them spoke to air traffic control seconds before he disappeared, describing something no one has ever explained. Another walked into a crowded bar covered in security cameras and was never seen leaving. And the third vanished on a trail in a stretch of forest where people have been disappearing for over a century. Think about that. In an age of satellites and facial recognition, where your phone knows where you are better than you do, these 3 people still found a way to vanish completely. Because wherever information is limited, speculation tends to fill the gaps. Let's start with the one that came from the sky. Case 1. Frederick Valentich, 1978. The pilot who reported a UFO then vanished. October 21st, 1978. A warm Saturday evening over the Bass Strait, the stretch of water that separates mainland Australia from the island of Tasmania. The sky was clear. The sea was calm. Flying conditions, by any reasonable measure, were close to perfect. At the controls was Frederick Valentich, 20 years old, a young pilot with about 150 hours in the air. He was flying a Cessna 182, a reliable little aircraft, on a routine training flight. His destination was King Island. His expected arrival time was logged. Nothing about the flight was unusual. Then, at 7:06 in the evening, Valentich radioed Melbourne Air Traffic Control. What he said next has been examined, dissected, and argued over for nearly half a century. He reported that another aircraft was flying near him, above him at high speed. Air Traffic Control checked their radar. There was no other aircraft in the area, Valentich insisted. He could see it. It was large. It had 4 bright lights, almost like landing lights. And it wasn't behaving like any plane he'd ever seen. "It's not an aircraft," he told the controller at one point. The object appeared to be playing with him, flying over him, circling him, changing altitude in ways no conventional machine could. Then his voice changed. "It is approaching from due east towards me," he said. "It seems to me that he's playing some sort of game. He's flying over me, 2, 3 times at speeds I could not identify." The controller asked him to describe the object more precisely. Valentich's reply is the part people still argue about. He said, with 4 words that have never been fully explained, "It is not an aircraft." Then he said the object was orbiting above him, that it had a long shape, that it was metallic. And then, 17 seconds before the transmission ended, he described something else. "It's hovering," he said, "and it's not an aircraft." The transmission cut to silence. For the next 17 seconds, air traffic control recorded nothing but a strange metallic scraping sound, a grinding, clicking noise that was never identified. And then, the frequency went dead. Frederick Valentich was never seen again. A search began almost immediately. Planes, helicopters, boats. They scoured the Bass Strait for days, and they found nothing. No wreckage, no oil slick, no body, not a single trace of a Cessna 182 that had, by all accounts, simply stopped existing somewhere over the water. Now, here's where the story splits into 2 worlds. The skeptical explanation is straightforward. Valentich, a young and relatively inexperienced pilot, likely became disoriented. He may have seen the lights of his own aircraft reflected or been confused by a distant star or planet. Flying over dark water with no horizon, a pilot can lose all sense of up and down, a phenomenon called spatial disorientation. In that state, the object orbiting him may have been nothing more than the reflection of his own instrument lights in the cockpit glass. And the grinding sound. Air traffic control explained that it could have been Valentich pressing the microphone button while moving, the scraping of the mic against something in the cockpit. A simple mechanical explanation. But what if that isn't the whole story? Because the UFO explanation never really went away. Witnesses across Australia that same night reported strange lights in the sky. One amateur photographer claimed to have captured an object rising from the water at the exact time and location of the disappearance. Decades later, wreckage was occasionally found washing up. Pieces that some believed matched the Cessna, and others insisted belonged to nothing at all. The story is certainly dramatic, and for decades, the theory spread across books, documentaries, and later the internet. But when investigators examined the available records, the official conclusion was far less cinematic. Valentich's disappearance was attributed to disorientation and a crash at sea. Case closed. Yet, despite that conclusion, no verified wreckage has ever been confirmed. Frederick Valentich's body has never been found, and that final metallic 17-second transmission remains on record, unexplained. Because the Bass Strait, like so many places, became a blank canvas. And wherever information is limited, speculation tends to fill the gaps. But not every disappearance happens over empty water. Some of them happen in the middle of a crowd. Case 2. Brian Shaffer, 2006. The man who walked into a bar and never walked out. April 1st, 2006. Columbus, Ohio. A 27-year-old medical student named Brian Shaffer was out celebrating the beginning of spring break. It was late, nearly 2 in the morning, and he was at a bar called the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a popular spot near the Ohio State University campus. Brian was with friends. They'd been bar hopping. The night was winding down. At around 1:55 a.m., Brian spoke to 2 women near the bar, then told his friend he was going to talk to them. He turned, walked toward the back of the bar, and was never seen again. Now, at a first glance, this sounds like the opening of 1,000 missing person stories. A man leaves a bar drunk, wanders off, and something tragic happens. But here's the strange part. The Ugly Tuna Saloona was on the 2nd floor of a building with exactly 2 exits. Both of them led to the same narrow escalator, and both were covered by security cameras. Every single person who entered or left that bar that night was recorded. After Brian vanished, investigators reviewed the footage, frame by frame, hour by hour. They watched every person walk in and every person walk out. Brian Shaffer was captured entering the building that night. He was never captured leaving it. Think about that. A man walks into a bar with one way in and one way out, both under constant camera, and he simply never exits. Not through the front, not through a back door, not through a window. Police searched every inch of that building. The bar, the bathrooms, the offices, the rooftop, the construction areas. Search dogs went through. Nothing. So the question that has haunted this case for almost 20 years is a simple one. How does a person leave a building without being seen leaving it? Theories, of course, multiplied. Some were mundane. Brian had been grieving. His mother had died of cancer just weeks earlier. Friends said he was in good spirits that night, but grief can hide. Some wondered if he'd walked off to harm himself. But if he had, where was the body? The nearby river was searched. Nothing. Others pointed to the construction. The building was under renovation, and a section was being rebuilt. Could Brian have fallen into a construction void, or become trapped somewhere that searchers missed? It sounds plausible. But the building was eventually demolished and rebuilt, and no remains were ever found. And then there were the stranger reports. In the weeks after his disappearance, Brian's friends received phone calls from his cell phone. The calls connected, and then immediately hung up. No one ever spoke. The phone was traced briefly to a town nearby. Then it went dead forever. Some believe Brian walked away deliberately, that he chose to disappear and start a new life, leaving behind a girlfriend, a promising medical career, and a family that would never stop looking. A fake name theory, a runaway theory. It sounds like something out of a thriller, and yet it's happened before. people do walk away. But here's what makes Brian's case different. If he planned to vanish, he chose the one building in Columbus where walking out unnoticed was impossible. And he still managed it. No body, no confirmed sighting, no bank activity, no passport use. Just a man who walked to the back of a bar and out of the world. Because some disappearances don't happen in the sky, and some don't happen in a crowd. Some happen in the oldest, quietest places on Earth, where the land itself seems to have a long memory of taking people. Case 3. The Bennington Triangle, the mountain that swallowed its visitors. Southwestern Vermont, a dense, green wilderness of mountains and trails and winding back roads, dotted with small towns where everyone knows everyone. It's beautiful country. It's also the setting for one of the most persistent clusters of unexplained disappearances in American history. Between 1945 and 1950, just 5 years, at least 5 people vanished in and around a single area, now known as the Bennington Triangle. The name is deliberate. It borrows from a more famous triangle thousands of miles to the south, where ships and planes have a habit of not coming back. The first was a man named Mitty Rivers, a 74-year-old hunting guide who knew those woods better than almost anyone alive. In November of 1945, he led a group of hunters through the mountains and walked ahead just out of sight to scout the trail. He was never seen again. A guide who'd spent his entire life in that forest, gone. No body was ever found. The second disappearance came almost exactly 1 year later. Her name was Paula Jean Weldon, and she's the case most people remember. Paula was an 18-year-old college student at Bennington College. On December 1st, 1946, she told her roommate she was going for a walk on the Long Trail, a famous hiking path that runs through the mountains. She was wearing a red coat. She left in the early afternoon. Witnesses later placed her on the trail, walking north. She never came back. The search for Paula Weldon was one of the largest in Vermont's history. Hundreds of people, aircraft, search dogs. The trail was swept again and again, and the result was the same as Mitty Rivers. No body, no clothing, no clue. Just a woman in a red coat walking into the trees and out of history. The disappearances continued. In 1949, a veteran named James Tedford boarded a bus in Bennington. He was seen on the bus at the stop before his destination. When the bus arrived, he was gone, his belongings still in the luggage rack. He had vanished from a moving vehicle without a sound. In 1950, an 8-year-old boy named Paul Jepson disappeared from his family's truck while they tended to a pig. And later that same year, a woman named Frida Langer, the last to vanish, walked away from her family's campsite to hike a short distance and disappeared. Now, here's where the pattern breaks, and it's the detail that keeps this case alive. Frida Langer's body was the only one ever found. 7 months after she vanished, her remains were discovered in an area that search teams had already swept multiple times. It was as if she had been placed there, or as if she had somehow returned. And that single recovery did the opposite of what you'd expect. It didn't solve the mystery, it deepened it. Because if Frida Langer's body could be missed by repeated searches, then maybe the others weren't vanished at all. Maybe they were simply never found. Or maybe, as the locals began to whisper, something in those mountains was taking people. The stories multiplied. Native American legends spoke of the mountains as a place of spirits. Local folklore warned of a man-eating stretch of the Long Trail. The region's geography, dense forest, sudden ravines, and steep, slippery terrain, can certainly kill. A fall into a ravine, a wrong turn in bad weather, and a body might never be recovered. It's the simplest explanation, and for most investigators, it's the correct one. 5 people, over 5 years, in rugged wilderness. Accidents happen. People get lost. The forest is large, and searching it is imperfect. But what if that isn't the whole story? Because the timing is what lingers. 5 people in 5 years, in one concentrated area, with no trace, while the single body that was recovered was found in ground that had already been searched. It's the kind of pattern that refuses to be explained by bad luck alone. The story is certainly dramatic, and for decades, the name Bennington Triangle has spread across books and documentaries and internet forums. Yet, despite all of it, no verified proof of anything supernatural has ever been found. Because southwestern Vermont remains what it's always been. A blank canvas. 3 cases, 3 very different settings. One man in the sky, speaking to air traffic control about something he couldn't identify seconds before silence. One man in a crowded bar, surrounded by cameras, who never walked out. And a stretch of Vermont forest, where for 5 strange years, people seem to walk into the trees and never come back. What connects them isn't an answer. It's the absence of one. We live in an age that promises certainty. Your phone tracks you. Satellites photograph the ground. A missing person is, in theory, the easiest thing in the world to find. And yet, these cases remind us that the world is still bigger and stranger and more indifferent than we like to admit. There are roughly 600,000 missing persons reports filed in the United States alone every year. The overwhelming majority resolve, but a fraction, a small, haunting fraction, do not. They simply end mid-sentence, like Frederick Valentich's final transmission. 17 seconds of a sound no one could identify, and then nothing. The greatest mystery of these disappearances may not be what happened to them. It's how much remains unknown. Because the scariest thing about a vanishing isn't the person who's gone. It's the question of where they went, and whether any of us truly knows where we are. If a story like these stays with you, you're in the right place. This channel exists for the cases that refuse to close, the ones where the official answer never quite fits the facts. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next case is already being investigated. And in the comments, tell me, of these 3, which one do you think has the most rational explanation, and which one will never make sense to you? I'll be reading.